well. Thank you, Jennifer. So we're the coasts are simultaneous. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody here today to joining us for the third. Our session today is entitled Off-Roading in the Rhône Valley Vineyards, and as it implies, we're getting a little bit off the beaten track, the Route Nationale, even the main subroutes that are there to areas that we don't perhaps talk about as much as we should with respect to the Rhône Valley, and I'm going to introduce my panel to do that in a minute. Just to clear up a little bit of housekeeping for those of you who have been with us, indulge me. For those of you for whom this is your first visit with us, as you know, because that's how you got here today, everything lives on Thinkific platform. It enables you to not only have done your pre-work early on in the overview and prep, which you got to see photographs and bios of our great speakers on, but it also gives you a little bit of a hint of to which kit we're on, or overview of the program that's there, and enables you to actually access the live session today. The little giraffe that you see next to tech support simply is a reminder for me to tell you that if you're coming in through Safari and you're having audio issues, I'd encourage you to disengage and come back through Chrome or Firefox or another browser where you don't have audio issues. I'd encourage all of you who are with us to stick around for our happy hour or happy half hour after the session is over in 90 minutes, because we'll continue dialogue there. It gives everybody an opportunity to go on Hollywood Squares of the Brady Bunch and chat with each other and answer questions in greater detail. We'd encourage you to support our program, but by not only staying engaged, which you have been doing, but answering the surveys, tasting the wines that you've received if you have wines, using the MTW platform for some of them if you do, etc. And then as you can see on the very bottom, all the tech sheets for all 6 of the wines present today can be accessed again right off of this particular platform. So everything lives in one place. As I just mentioned, you can learn even if you don't have the wine. A large number of you do. We were blessed to be able to create a platform through our sister company, Master of the World, by which 120 kits were shipped out with the 6 wines that we have today. But not everybody, there was way more demand for kits than we have wine. So we are aware of the fact that not everybody out there has one, but as in most Zoom land classes these days, that's more typical the case, and we're all becoming expert in working without the wines too. There'll be a lot of there. Please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, because we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. The chat box is a good place to have community dialogue, say hello, connect with your people, comment on a particular topic or something that's being there, but please make sure you select all panelists and attendees be able to do that. If not, you're just talking to the panel only, and much as they'd love to hear from you, everyone would like to hear from you. For those of you who have not been able to attend prior sessions or have missed a session here along the there, or will be missing a session moving forward, the nice thing about our Thinkific platform is that recordings of all the sessions will be posted there and can be accessed at any time over the next year. And then timing, I don't need to say a lot, as you guys have been incredibly prompt, and we are trying to do so as well. So we move to the next slide. Just a little bit of a quick plug-in reminder that all wine sessions do include the Master of the World MTW Wines interface. We highly encourage you to not crack your bottles and taste them for the first time as we're going through this particular course, or any of the courses, because you'll feel like you're drinking water out of a fire hose simply to keep up, but get a little bit of a jump start earlier in the day, or even ideally the day before, and gas them as possible. If you really want to get into it well, you can work on tasting the wines blind and really working on getting your tasting skills more precise by using the interface at masteroftheworld.com. For those of you who are competitive, and I know a lot of you are, 608L, when you interface with the site, is the leaderboard to be able to jump in and do so over time. To encourage you to engage here at 2 levels, we're definitely having winners for all sessions. For people who do have wines, the grand prize winner per session will get a future Master of the World blind tasting kit, and it will go out to you, as well as 3 months of Somm TV. And then lastly, 2 other winners will not get a kit, but they'll also get part of the Blinders card game and an associated 3 months of Somm TV. And then if you don't have the wines, but you have been interfacing all along, and you did attend all 8 sessions, either live or in recorded format afterwards, you will be entered in a drawing for a full 12-month subscription to Master of the World. So it pays to engage, it pays to participate. And on that note, I'm going to bring in our speakers, co-speaker Madeline Triffon, lead, and her co-speaker Tim Gaiser, and I'm going to go off screen, hand it over to them, and let them take you through the off-roads of the Côte du Rhône.
Well, hello, everybody from New Mexico. And Evan, I just want you to know, I lived in this city for more than 30 years, right? And I'm in New Mexico now, and this morning it was 26 degrees and it snowed 2 weeks ago. So this is the real version of winter. Anyway, welcome everybody. I hope you're keeping safe and well. To start, I'd like by introducing my fellow panelists today. First, from Detroit, Michigan, a dear friend and fellow Master Sommelier, Madeline Triffon.
Hello, everyone. And we have a glorious weather here, so you could be jealous, San Francisco.
That's great. And next up, Sabine Delbare from Inter-Rhône, if we could change the slide. And Sabine's going to give us an official welcome in just a few moments. And next up from Costières de Nîmes, Michel Gassier from Famille Gassier. And from Ventoux, Frédéric Chaudière from Château Pesquis, and we're looking forward to Fred's comments. And finally, Cyril Tizopoulou from Maison, Brotte, and Tavel. So that's our panelists for today, and I'd like to bring in Sabine at this point for some opening thoughts and comments. Sabine?
Hi everyone, my name is Sabine Delbare. I'm the Export Marketing Manager for Inter-Rhône, which is a trade syndicate that promotes the Rhône Valley Vineyards. I'm very excited to be here tonight for us. I know it's today for you. It's our third session. I'm hoping a few of you have followed the previous one and that you really enjoyed them. I'm going to quickly introduce you to the Rhône Valley. Before, I want to thank you, all of you, the Full Circle team, Evan, Madeline team, and our Rhône speakers. Thank you very much for being here. So the Rhône Valley is more than 2,000 years of wine production. It's the second largest AOC wine region in France, with 31 appellation, 34 grape varieties, an average of 9% organic, but you'll see we can have some differences between the AOC. Tonight we'll probably talk about it. 75% of the red are red. You'll see on the map on the right, the Rhône Valley is 241 kilometers, which means around 150 miles along the Rhône River, going from the Vienne in the north and Avignon to the south. So maybe we can go to the next slide. So you see the Rhône Valley has got a lot of richness and diversity to offer, with different terroirs, soils, climates, grapes, aromas. Tonight, today for you, sorry, we're gonna focus on 3 AOCs. So the first one is the one on the bottom that you can see on the map. It's called Costières de Nîmes. So Michel will probably explain to you the influence of the Mediterranean Sea and much more. The second AOC we're going to talk about will be Ventoux, that you can find on the east side with this famous mountain. And the last one is the unique cru of the Côte du Rhône, Tavel, which made 100% rosé. They note for their food-friendly signature, and of course Cyril will be the best to talk about it. For the luckiest one, I wish you a great tasting, and for the other, a great learning session. Thank you very much, and speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sabine. So everybody, just a quick reminder that since this slide is made up of 1 white wine and 3 rosés, you might, as the session go on, first of all, feel free to start tasting right now. So you make it through all the wines with plenty of time and you can listen to the discourse. But you also might, with the smaller bottles, just refresh your glasses, at some point, say halfway through. Okay, with that, let's get started. And we're going to start by talking about the Costières de Nîmes. But before we do that, Madeline, I would love your thoughts about these 3 appellations. and how you've used the wines in your career in different programs.
Happy to talk about it. Hello, everyone. And it is indeed a glorious, sunny, perfect Michigan fall day, but not for long. This is exciting because I've been working with some of these wines for an extended period of time. Well, since the 80s for certain when it comes to Tavel. The most recent experience of mine in terms of quality and style is the Costières de Nîmes, and I've certainly known Ventoux through the years as a source of exceptional value. But what's really interesting to me is how these are evolving, especially in recent times. I mean, Ventoux certainly still presents as a whole exceptional continuing value. I mean, stunning wines for the money. Lighter in style as a whole, if I were to generalize, but not going to be evidenced by the wine we're tasting today, but true and spicy to the varietals. Tavel, you know, has been around since I started playing with wine, but what I've noticed evolving over the years are the expressions of style and also the different specific terroirs within the significantly sizable commune from different estates. You know, what does continue is the expression of rich rosé versus delicate expressions further east, especially from Provence. But, you know, to use a hackneyed phrase, they are, when they're rich, authentic red wine alternatives. And I know that the commune is proud of that in terms of accommodating a broad base of cuisine. The Costières de Nîmes, I was thrilled when I actually visited it, probably you know, around 10 years ago, but there were what I knew as galets, you know, and expressions of Syrah that I hadn't expected. And certainly that has consolidated over the last decade. And I just love the region in terms of its architecture and its landscape, probably because it reminds me a little of my home in Greece. Takeaway for me as, you know, as a whole, this is not, you know, we're not talking about three regions that belong to any sort of generic soup. They're very diverse expressions, not only in the three regions, but also from estate to estate. And what's, I know that some of our experts are going to address is their specific positions geographically with relationship to the Rhône for sure, but especially the Mediterranean, and a little bit where altitude is concerned. Makes sense in terms of the different expression of style. So quality on a vertical climb.
Thanks, Maddie. That's all great stuff. I would have to echo your thoughts. You know, for me, Tavel, I used in programs, and here we're dating ourselves when there were pterodactyls and we used overhead projectors and things like that.
I won't make the sound.
Yeah, but certainly I used Tavel very successfully in programs in the late 90s, long time ago. Mm-hmm. And Ventoux, you know, certainly became, it came into my awareness probably in the mid 90s, as well as Costières de Nîmes. And those two just sources for incredible value wines. And I remember using both wines when Virtual Vineyards, which was before wine.com. So a long, long time ago. But to echo what you were just saying, to me, these are such distinct personalities within the larger context of the Rhône, and, you know, high quality across the board, but just the expressions are so unique that to me, it's a place in the wine world where I will always pay attention, because forever and a day, we're going to be surprised and delighted by new things and great wines from here.
And you have been there recently, correct?
That's right. You know, a year ago, April, I did a river cruise from Lyon to Arles. That was a week. And so it was remarkable to actually be on the river for that entire length of time and to see it really close up. And it was an extraordinary trip. Lots of fun. Yeah. All right, so let's start with the Costières de Nîmes and a beautiful photograph by just so you can see the landscape. And the first one showed you the Rhône. And just the spirit of the place. And let's go back, please, one slide. Li Ming, we need to go back. There we are, thank you. So that's great. So that's a great photograph of the landscape. And forward one slide, please. And so the first expression there is fraîcheur maritime, and that means vibrancy of a maritime climate. As Sabine noted, it's the southernmost AOP in the Rhône, and that means it's closest to the Mediterranean, and that means that there's ocean and marine influence. And so you have this warm Mediterranean climate, but at the same time, you have a diurnal shift at night because you have marine influence and breezes and cooler temperatures. In 1986, Costières de Nîmes was awarded an AOC, and since 1989, it's been part of the Rhône Valley Association Inter-Rhône. Last year, the production, 3,680 hectares, equals about 177,594 hectoliters. The average yield here is 54 hectoliters per hectare. And for those of you like me who are metrically challenged, the conversion is 1 ton to the acre to 13.5 hectoliters per hectare. So the average there is about 4 tons to the acre, just over, which is really, really low for a large area. In terms of export markets, 40% of the total production is exported, and China, US, and the UK are major markets. And next slide, please. A little bit of history about the area. One of the things for me, and I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan of antiquity in Roman and Greek history. And so I was thrilled to be in the Southern Rhône last year. In fact, in Arles, there's a remarkable Roman antiquity museum. But the history of Costières de Nîmes goes back to the 5th century BCE, where Greeks began to develop viticulture and winemaking. In 31 BCE, the Roman legionaries returning from the Egyptian campaign, and by the way, that's the same campaign that involved Cleopatra and Mark Antony, but they settled in what is now Nîmes and expanded vineyards and winemaking.
Can I interject there, Tim? Isn't that the genesis of their the palm and the crocodile expression, that logo that you see, that we see?
It's exactly it. Yeah, good thought, Madeline. Fast forwarded to the Middle Ages, the Abbey of Saint-Gilles was founded in the 12th century, and with it, the establishment of the Knights of Hospitalier of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, and that was one of many medieval Catholic military orders. Also in the Middle Ages, in the 14th century, the Papal Schism, at the Avignon Papal Court, the wines of Costières de Nîmes were among the most popular. And then finally, in the 20th century, well, kind of a hybrid of the 17th century, 20th century. First of all, the building of the Canal du Midi in the 17th century, which served as a long time as really a water artery between inland Costières de Nîmes and the Mediterranean. And then finally, in 1955, the construction of the Canal du Bas-Rhône du Languedoc, which supplied water from the Rhône and really expanded agriculture and viticulture throughout the area. I mentioned a few moments ago what's important about Costières de Nîmes and what sets it apart from other appellations in Rhône that are further inland and landlocked is its proximity to the Mediterranean. And that means there's marine influence, and at night that means a wider diurnal shift, that the land and the vines have time to cool off, to basically respire from the heat of the day. And that means that the grapes retain higher natural acidity, and the wines also retain higher natural acidity. And here are the numbers and things at a glance for the region. In terms of wine styles produced, 7% are white, 43 are rosé, and then 50% are red. Last year in 2019, production 3,680 hectares, producing 177,594 hectoliters. Here's a list of the major grape varieties. We need to go back, thanks. So white grape varieties, Grenache Blanc, some of these not a surprise that you find in other places in the Rhône, such as Marsanne and Roussanne, Herbelonc, Claret. Verbentino is a surprise for me. And of course, Viognier. Red grapes, of course, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre being really the stalwarts, and then also Carignan and Cinsault. The production farmed organically, the percentage is 14%, and it's increasing all the time. Major soil types include pebbles, which are locally called grès. These are literally pebbles from the Rhône that have washed inland over thousands of years of time. that combined with sand and clay and limestone. And at this point, I'm going to bring in Michel to tell us more about it because he knows more than I'll ever know. Michel, please.
Hi. Am I on? You guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that you hit, you and Madeline have hit all the major points about the appellation. I think that we are part of the Rhône Valley because our soil was of the same creation as the rest of the Rhône Valley. It was pebble deposits about 1 to 2 million years ago. What makes us unique and different is our microclimate. And as you explained, those thermal winds, and just by the way, the body of water that we saw on that first picture are the marshes of Camargue. That's how close the vineyards are to the water. And the Mediterranean is only a few miles behind those. So the vineyards are really against the Mediterranean, and that does create a very unique microclimate within the Rhône Valley. I think that even though the area has been producing wines for several thousand years, we are new to the quality game, and in the sense that there is a resurgence in the appellation because of the younger generations are coming back in. People are totally convinced about the potential of the area, and the appellation is finding its stride, and its stride is mostly focusing on wines of balance, of freshness, of good acidity. Sometimes the best expression have a little saline quality in the back end. All that microclimate can allow us to do. So as you guys are tasting probably the first wine, a few words on Château Beaubois is a very good example of what is still a minor production in Costières. As you saw on the slide, whites only represent 7%, but by and large, it's a great color for our zone. That microclimate allows us to produce wines with crisp, fresh fruit, high acidity, and very surprising for the Rhône Valley. I mean, when we present all our wines, usually people come out saying, I love the wines, but the wines that really surprised me the most are the whites. So here, a very classic, beautifully done example of white Costières de Nîmes, predominantly relying on Grenache Blanc, which with Roussins are the two main white varietals in Costières. Again, a good example of a family winery with Fanny and François, the younger generation that has come back and is really developing this estate. And their property is right at the bottom of Costières, right against the marshes of Camargue.
I have it in my glass. Do you mind if I describe what I'm perceiving?
Please.
Unless you have it also?
No, I don't, unfortunately.
I'm very excited about what you're saying, because it's really, if we can go back to the previous slide, please, just so everyone can see the stats on the wine. I'm going to describe it before I read the statistics, actually, because this wine just has wonderful mouthfeel. It's lush and flavors of, stone fruit, peach. It's certainly not acid deficient, but just enough acidity to be vaguely mouthwatering and refreshing, but it's a mouthful all by itself. It speaks to perfectly ripe, not overripe. Melons, peaches, apricots, and such. I just love the mouthfeel. Reading the statistics, you can see that the fermentation takes place in 450-liter casks. It does have lees aging, not super extensive, Zippo oak on this. There's a little dash of Viognier. I don't know as I get it aromatically, but it's certainly, maybe there's a floral characteristic that carries gently and quietly through to the palate as well, but it's really Grenache with a teeny splash of Roussanne. Looking at their website, speaking to Michel's point, the brother and sister are young indeed, and so is their their whole team, and they are organically farmed, and they're proud to say they're halfway between Nîmes and the Mediterranean, and they credit the Mediterranean breezes and the Mistral for keeping the mildew down. I have a quick question for Michelle, because the stones in the area, first of all, do you pronounce it Grès because it's in the south as opposed to Grès? Is that correct? And
I pronounce it Grès.
And that adds to the diurnal shift, the lower nighttime temperatures, correct? Because the stones, can you speak to that? Because that's a very interesting point.
Yes, actually, when during the day the sun hits the pebbles, and they get superheated. So let's say on a hot day, if you try to grab a large pebble at like 3 p.m., it's so hot you can't hold it in your hands, okay? Because usually they're of a dark color and they absorb the heat. So they radiate that heat and they amplify the temperature difference between the air that sits on the Mediterranean and the air that sits on the land. So what we call them thermal winds, and they blow part of the day one way, part of the day the other way. Think about it. The sea has the same temperature at night or during the day. Okay, if you go swimming at midnight or at noon, you pretty much feel the same way. But the land is cool at night and is warm during the day. And the shift occurs around half day solar time. Okay, so for us, it's like 1 to 2 p.m. Then the soil gets way hotter than the sea. The air that sits above rises and it creates a pull, and the air that sits on top of the Mediterranean gets brought in. And that air is not only cooler, but it's more humid. And it kind of gives a breather to the vine that is stressed from not just the temperature, but also the dryness of the air.
Thanks so much for speaking to that. It's just so interesting.
I think that those who live in California can probably grasp really well that phenomenon. We frequently have fog in the morning as well, not as drastic as what you see on the California coast, but it's the same logic.
Thank you very much. And I hope those of you who have the kits are enjoying the wine as much as I do. It certainly doesn't need food, though it can accommodate all sorts of, spices and flavors. We can go on to the next slide, Li Meng. And Tim, shall I talk a little bit about Ventoux? Is now the time?
Yes, please.
Okay, this was, there's Mont Ventoux in the background, snow-capped. And this is an area that actually in my original career used to call Côte de Ventoux, and I think that they changed that in the 80s just to Ventoux, or maybe a little bit later than that. It's a significantly large area. We can go to the next slide. And since we've been talking about diurnal shifts, we have a different effect of fraîcheur or coolness de la montagne. There's a beautiful view of the mountain to the right. And we also have a combination, kind of a massif of the Ventoux, Vaucluse, Luberon mountain range. And that has a significant effect in terms of impacting the temperature. It is, and we can go to the next slide. It is, it does create a rain shadow, but it also impacts nighttime temperatures. And it does moderate the Mistral a little bit, actually. Let's see. The wines certainly have aromatic lift and freshness. This is very interesting. The area since 1990 has been listed as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, meaning it has tremendous biodiversity and it's a protected site. As you can see, it's pretty large, and it reaches down to from Grignan, Les Aldemars, I'm probably killing the pronunciation, down to the Cabellon River. It's had an AOC since '73. Production is significant. You know, we're pushing 5,700 hectares. And this was an interesting stat to me. Significant export, but US doesn't make it as a major market. And I think we should change that. And I will tell you that Michigan is contributing because at least the folks I work for sell quite a bit of Ventoux of all colors. Another very interesting stat in terms of their history, evidently, the amphora that have been uncovered in the village of Maison, I'm not entirely sure exactly where that's located. It dates back, it is the oldest recorded amphora in southern France, if not France. So again, another area that flourished during the Avignon papacy, but as we'll learn, you know, this whole area did just that. And the Ventoux wine growers did form a union in 1939, the Syndicat de Vin de Ventoux, which was significant in helping them reach their AOC status in 1973. We can go on. You know, no surprise, dominantly red, but rosé is nudging right up against there with just a splash of white wine. Major grape varieties. On the whites, Bourboulogne leads, followed by Claret and Grenache Blanc. No surprise on the reds, Grenache leads, but significant amounts of Syrah, Sanson, Mourvèdre, and Carignan. And not quite as impressive as the Costières de Nîmes, but you know, over 10% of the production is farmed organically. And the terroir is quite diverse. Pockets of sand, clay, and limestone. And speaking to that, the limestone base of Mont Ventoux plays into that diversity as well. I didn't want to minimize the effect of the Mistral that's felt, you know, everywhere, but the Massif, Mont Ventoux specifically, does act not only a little bit as a rain shadow, but it does moderate the effect of the Mistral, though the growers are still grateful for the drying effect it has on humidity. Tons of sunshine, lots of almond trees and olive trees as well. And Pesquier, I think, Frédéric, you're going to speak to this beautiful wine. This is wine number 2, the Château, did I pronounce it correctly? Pesquier Terrasse Ventoux Rosé.
Absolutely, Madeline. Thank you very much for introducing our wine and our Ventoux AOC. Maybe just a few quick words, because we you know, the Ventoux is our mythical mountain, but we part of its myth, it's of course driven by biking and by cycling, and we just got the confirmation last week that the Tour de France will be back next July in the Ventoux, and it's actually going to be an incredible moment, because not only they're going to climb it once, but twice during the same run. So I hope there won't be catastrophe, but it's surely going to be a crazy show for people who like cycling.
Well, thank you for fleshing that out. And I do have one question I want to throw at you right away before I forget, because it's applicable to what we just spoke about from Doug. Is the growing percentage of organic farming market driven in this area, or is this driven by the farmers themselves?
I think it's more the farmers. There's no doubt that we all want to sell our wines, but there's a growing awareness of. It's a whole of the fact that, first of all, our land is kind of quite blessed because of its incredible climate to grow vines organically, and I think. You know, Michel was saying that somehow the growers in the Costières de Nîmes have been kind of discovered lately the incredible potential of their terroir. And our story in the Ventoux is a bit the same one. For a long time, there were people producing grapes, but didn't know that much about wine. And now it's been 3 decades that there's really a kind of it's more and more premium wines that are produced. And if you really get interest in trying to express your terroir, then kind of automatically
You're going to move in that
towards
direction of
more,
agriculture, right?
is a natural path. So we still have a long way to go. You've seen the numbers. For the 2020 vintage, we're hoping to pass 13%. We're getting better, but yes, there's definitely a growing awareness and a growing dynamic toward organic certification.
Can you tell us about this beautiful lifted rosé and your estate? As people are tasting it, we have over 100 people who are enjoying this wine right now.
Well, so we at Château Pesquier, we're a family estate. I'm the third generation. With my brother Alex, we took it over about 17 years ago. We are actually certified organic. We are kind of more on the biodynamic certification right now, and we're based at the very south of the Ventoux mountain itself. So we're already quite a bit in altitude. We're around between 1,000 and 1,500 feet of altitude. This is a rosé that is mainly the expression of Cinsault, and Cinsault is kind of the magical grape for rosé in the southern Rhône. It has a kind of a very thin skin, bigger berry, great acidity, low alcohol. So everything you want to make a crisp, balanced, very bright kind of rosé. We have, you mentioned the diversity, the geological diversity that we have. And indeed, what really makes the Ventoux special is a climate, a microclimate, thanks to the influence of the mountain. But here we have limestone for most of the Grenache and the Syrah, but most of the Cinsault is actually grown on sand. And so it kind of helps bringing, more elegance, how could I say, lightness to the blend, when the Grenache will bring a little bit more fruit, and Syrah a tiny bit of structure. But it's except for the 10% of Syrah, it's a direct press rosé. So we're kind of in the spirit of the Provence style. And you've seen on the map how we are in the south of the Rhône Valley and already kind of at the crossroad between Provence and the southern Rhône. And one of the nicknames of the Ventoux mountain is the Giant of Provence. And somehow, it's true actually. Well, I'm not going to enter the delimitation of French regions for wine, but there is a very strong rosé culture in the southern Rhône and in the Ventoux because of this proximity. And so in style, we are trying to navigate somehow in between the Provence and the Tavel style.
I think you're inching closer to Provence if one were to generalize, but the wine just stands on its own merit. I'll say it again, it's so lifted. There's such a freshness and a prettiness and a defined delicacy to it. Bravo.
Thank you very much.
Tim,
right.
would you have any more questions for Frederic?
No, but I would echo your comments. The wine has such great delicacy, but is such intensity. It's a very tightly wound coil, and would be such a wonderful and versatile wine with who knows how many different kinds of food.
And texturally, it's very long. Oh, wonderful.
All right, so Li-Meng, if we can go on, please.
Hey, Tim, I also gave you
Yes.
control of the slides, so you can just move the slides as you see fit. If you have any trouble with it, I will be in your background. It's hard for me to tell exactly when to move on for you.
Okay, I'll try, thanks. All right, everyone, so the third of this trio of very unique Appalachian protégés that we're going to talk about today is Tavel. And actually, Li-Meng, there we go. A great shot to show you the galets that found in area and the beautiful color. So Tavel, if the Rhône is a crown filled with precious stones, then Tavel to me is a ruby. And it's a cru first, and then France's only rosé-only AOC. The appellation was founded in 1936, making it one of France's oldest. And really, Tavel is the gastronomic rosé, and it's known for its beautiful color and really its incredible potential and its versatility for pairing with food. I call it really the rosé chameleon because it changes facets with, you know, different kinds of foods that you would pair it with. Obviously, we're talking about a Mediterranean climate with an average of 2,700 hours of sunshine a year, which is considerable, very low rainfall. And then last year in 2019, 898 hectares, which is really only about 2,200 acres, produced 29,868 hectoliters. The average yield here is 41 hectoliters per hectare, which is just over 3 tons per acre in terms of our reckoning here in the US. And 35% of the entire production is exported with major markets in Belgium, the US, and Germany. And next slide, Li Ming, please.
You should be able
I
to do.
unfortunately don't have control.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. I'll do it.
Okay.
You might just have to tell me. Yep.
Okay, thank you. A little bit of history about the region. Like so many other places in the southern Rhône, vines were first planted by the Greeks in the 5th century BCE. It was an important place between the settlements of Brotte and Nîmes. And in the 13th century, fast forwarding to the Middle Ages, we have the first written documentation of the name Villa Tavelis, which later would become Tavel. In 1737, a royal edict was published that no foreign wine could be used in the production of wines from Tavel. In 1902, the growers in Tavel formed their own union, the syndicate, and really the purpose initially was to promote the wines locally, but as time went on in the following decades, it was to promote the wines internationally. And then of course, as I just mentioned, in 1936, Tavel became the first rosé-only AOC and the only one in the history of France. In terms of Tavel as a region at a glance, again, 100% rosé wines made. The production figures we mentioned just a few moments ago. What most people don't know is that 9 grapes are permitted to produce the wine. Red grapes, Grenache is really the workhorse that accounts for 30 to 50% of any wine. That's followed by Syrah, Mourvèdre, Cinsault, an ancient grape called Calator that you may not have heard of, and then Carignan. White grapes include Claret, Brubelong, and Picpoul. And having 9 grapes like this really allows all the different producers and winemakers really different expressions of the wine. There are 3 major terroirs in region. Sand, of course, brings elegance to the wine. Loess, which is really, it's flagstone, but it's very fragile and it's very layered and crumbles easily. That provides the minerality, the middle of the wine. And then, of course, as we just saw in the photo, the Le Gallet that lends power and link to the wines. And then you can see the last bullet on this slide. In 2019, 30% of all the production was farmed organically. All right, at this point, I'm going to bring in Cyril because he knows much more about Tavel and these wines than I do, and I'm looking forward to his comments. Cyril.
Good morning, all. I'm Cyril Tizopulo from the Brotte winery. I've been working there since 2003. Brotte winery is a winery in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and we are making Kéran and Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Village-Laudin as well as Tavel. I really love Tavel because it's a really gastronomic rosé. You know, it's a kind of rosé really different from Provence rosé and crispy and fresh rosé. It's more a rosé for dinner to eat with. I overlook viticulture and winemaking in Brotte winery. And first, I worked 18 years ago in Tavel at the Cave Cooperative, actually. And that was a really good first experience for me. But now I'm working in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and I'm making Tavel for the Brotte winery. And I work hand in hand with Christine Brotte. She's the wife of our CEO and owner, Laurent Brotte. And she's responsible for all the production. As you mentioned, the terroir of Tavel produces fantastic rosés for gastronomy, and they display complexity and elegance. And for our Tavel, we are vinifying traditionally. Our specificity is lees. We make a lot of batonnage of steering lees during fermentation and during aging. And we are making Tavel with 90% of Grenache because we love this grape variety. And Grenache is made on the plateau of Vallongue. Vallongue is the terroir on uphill of Tavel, and it's a terroir of pebbles. So all the Grenache is coming from this area. And we are putting in the blend some Syrah and some Clarets, and they are more coming, Syrah is more coming from the, I'm sorry, I forgot the name. The rocks, and the Claret is coming from the sands. So the blend is making a really complex wine. And
Gallet.
No, not Gallet.
No, not Gallet. No.
The limestones. The limestone.
Oh, the limestone, right.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
And people are giving a lot of richness. So the wine is really, I don't like the term powerful, but it's like really complex with a lot of structure and richness. And that's what makes the difference with all the rosés that we can drink actually at this time. So that's it.
Cyril, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I remember years ago having dinner at a friend's house and him pulling out a 15-year-old bottle of Tavel Rosé, me expecting the wines to be oxidized, and it was being absolutely delicious. So I think that's something that most people don't know, is that because of the age of the vines, the density, the dry extract here, and the balance going in, is that these rosés, if properly cellared, can actually age for a bit.
Yeah, actually, rosé is sometimes aged in big oak cask in some domains of the appellation, and it's the work on this kind of rosé is almost the same than a red work. We are macerating 24 hours the grapes with the juice, and pressing after that, and blending the juice with the grapes. That's not what normally we do with rosé, because normally we press directly and we ferment as white wine. But for Tavel, it's like a mix between red and white, or between red and rosé, actually, because the maceration is giving a lot of tannins. And these tannins are giving the wine the potential to age very well in the time. So that's why you can sometimes keep some Tavel like 20 years, and it's still really fresh and really gastronomic,
Tim, to that point, do you mind if I describe the wine for those who don't have it in front of them? Would that be okay with you?
Oh, please. Yeah, please do.
Because what really struck me when I smelled this initially, the fragrance is just lovely. It's like red plums dancing with roses and violets. So it's got actually a red wine floral component too. And on the palate, mid palate, there's this beautiful red plummy sweetness to it, an illusion of sweetness, obviously. And then the structure kicks in when you swallow it or spit it out. There's a significant amount of refined tannin. The tannin management is just terrific on this. And followed by a mouth-watering acidity followed by a little bit of salinity too, unless I've got, you know, salinity on the brain. But I find myself craving something slathered with good olive oil with this wine.
Absolutely. You know, what's amazing to me about these wines is that, you know, all rosé has a lot of fruit and hopefully enough acidity to balance the fruit. The middle of Tavel wines to me have always been so focused and dense and concentrated and speak to that place in terms of quality.
And this wine is a testimony to that. Absolutely. May I ask? I like asking the silly question in the room. Now, all incarnations of Grenache are permitted, correct? Grenache Blanc, Grenache Gris, and Grenache Rouge.
What? Sorry?
Well, all the different types of the grape variety Grenache are grown in the area. Yes, not just Grenache.
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
of course.
Gris and Blanc as well.
Yeah, yeah. We are in our Tavel, we are just putting red Grenache, but you can find a lot of different type of Grenache. The white is the more famous, but the most famous. But you can find as well gray Grenache, pink Grenache. It's I think it's more like different genetic Grenache, you know, but it's still the same grape variety.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So Madeline, do you want to talk about wine, the next wine?
I'm delighted, and I'm going to have to regretfully divorce my mind from the Brotte because it was wonderful, but we really have a different expression of Tavel. And I want to encourage everyone who does have the two wines together to look at them against a white surface, because Evan mentioned this when we opened the seminar, that the three rosés have very different hues indeed. And these two Tavels are not the same color. To me, the one that we just tasted has a little hint of the proverbial salmon, and this one, wine number 4, the Château d'Aqueria, is more of a true rose, which follows through to the very rim in the blazing sunlight I'm sitting in. Before I describe what I'm tasting, because I'm going to let the finish of the previous wine go away, let's talk about this for a moment. This is interesting in that all the varieties are hand harvested and vinified separately. They do spend 6 months on the lees, no oak or ML. And the initial blend, so after the individual batches are made, the blend takes place in November, and then the second blending in January before bottling. If you look at the cepage, it's quite different from the previous Tavel. So obviously what's planted on the estate and the vision of the family or the producer comes into play here. There's 20% claret, white grape, followed by, there's the Cinsault, Mourvedre, Syrah, Bourboulogne, and Pic Poul. They've been making wine for a very long time, since the end of the 16th century. As I mentioned, it's the largest estate in the appellation, but this is very interesting indeed. All the vineyards are contiguous. Their estate is a single plot, if you will. And the winemaker is a family member, and he's been working there since the late 70s, which is when I started in wine when I was 10 years old. And I'm going to go ahead and retaste this. You know, aromatically, this is a very different expression, and I'm not going to intellectualize, you know, the reason for it. But, you know, the cepage is sitting in front of you. Aromatically, it's a little more quiet. It's a little more white wine-esque, if you will. And the expression of red berries is high-toned strawberry and red cherry to me. And on the palate, the mouthfeel, again, is slightly more focused towards the acidity. You feel the alcohol, but it's very well balanced. And the tannin It's very finely grained. It really doesn't pull my attention, though I think the wine, though I would really call it medium bodied, if I have to put a thumbprint on it, would certainly work with rich, rustic foods. Do you want to add anything to that, Tim? I find this very elegant.
You know, I agree with everything you said. You know, to me, what is still there is this incredible density of the mid palate, but there's a lot more lift. There's a lot more citrus blossoms, and the red fruit there is higher toned, more raspberry and cranberry, and but there's still this dense middle to it. And just makes it
yes.
For lack of a better way to say it, it's a very serious, and again, the rosé chameleon comparison comes in. I mean, this is something you could drink with any number of different cuisines.
Not only that, but this is a wine where it's actually occurred to my subconscious. Gee, I wonder what this would like with a little bit of bottle age, because I think there's hidden promise in this wine, and the minerality on this is a very strong undertone, which I didn't mention. Thank you for piping up about that.
Yeah, Cyril, can you please add some thoughts about this wine?
Actually, I don't have this wine with me. I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
I can say that Château d'Acaria is really, really famous in France. Is considered like one of the best domain of Tavel, actually.
Do you know, to that point, I remember putting it on wine lists, you know, a million years ago, probably when I was at the London Chop House in Detroit, Tim. And what's really heartening to me as a village elder is to see that the wine is actually as, if not more stylish than it used to be. We have a question about the serving temperature and how the flavor profiles might change. My 10 cents is over chill them and then just put them in a sizable glass and watch them warm up, because I'm tasting it at probably, you know, 55 right now, and it tastes terrific. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb. It also depends on where you are, because if it's summer in New Mexico, the ambient temperature inside the house here is almost 80 degrees. So you would want to chill it down, and to your point, really let it warm up gradually, and all the aromatics are just glorious. Yeah.
There is a question about climate change. Do you want to hold that off till later? I don't know if you wanted to direct
Madeline,
that. Okay,
we'll get to the end. Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's go forward. Thanks, Cyril, for your comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Li Ming, next slide, please. All right, so everyone, we're going to go, as they say in TV, now for something completely different. And we're going to go to the La Gazette Ventoux Rouge 2016 from Maison. And this is more along the line of what people think of a Southern Rhône blend, but here not dominated by Grenache, but just slightly more Syrah. 15% alcohol, and we're going to see where place really matters here, because normally 15% alcohol to me means an SUV that's top heavy and a liability on the road. Here, not so much, because we've got the acid, the lift from the diurnal shift because of location of the appellation. In terms of winemaking, obviously there's destemming of fruit, the must is pumped into vats, there's a pre-fermentation for several days, and then a long ferment. 10% of aged in cask, of which 10% is new, and then the rest is in large neutral barrels or stainless steel. So there's the assemblage. You can see the Syrah that adds the pepper, the savory, the gamey notes, and then the wide range of fruits, the Grenache, which is the flesh and the richness, and the Carignan, which is the sturdiness and the firm, the structure at the end. And so everybody, if you want to go ahead and just...
May I speak to the texture and the mouthfeel, Tim? Because
I'm just to the nose, Maddie.
Oh, yeah. God. You mean I'm tasting faster than you are? The sun's going to rise in the west. But
that's a first, right? Everybody, this, you know, the nose to me on this wine is just remarkable, because the range of fruit is practically everything. So you've got dried fruit. The only thing that's missing is blue fruit. So you've got dried fruit, you've got really tart cranberry craisin, you've got plums, you've got dates, you know, some sultana and dark and red fruits. But then the main show is basically above the glass because you've got black pepper, you've got potpourri, you've got dried flowers. There's a stony earth quality to it. There's savory, there's game. Wow. Okay, so now I'm going to taste it. I haven't tasted it in about half an hour. So immediately this blast of fruit within the middle is the best of all these three grapes. And then at the end in salivation, there's so much lift to the wine, which is really surprising. So this wine is so deceptive. It's powerful, it's dense, it's compacted, but layered, complex, and the lift to me really makes this wonderful wine. Yeah, Madeline, what do you think?
Yes and yes and yes. I mean, I can't get away from the mouthfeel. I'm very glad that you are, per usual, poetic in describing the different aromatics and flavors, because especially holding it on the palate, it was shocking to me how you had this fantastic nerve of acidity with significant tannin. I mean, it's actually mouth drying, but mid palate also you have this perfectly ripe black fruit to me as well. And then there's the alcohol just singing right along. It belongs in this symphony. I just love the way this wine feels as well as tastes.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So Fred, can we ask you for some additional comments, maybe about the state, but red wines in Ventoux?
Well, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Madeline. I don't have the luck to have the wine with me, but I think you beautifully described it. Patricia Alexandre, who's the owner and winemaker at Domaine des Pères, basically she came in, I think, less than 10 years ago, and she used to be the head of the Goemio, which is a famous food and wine magazine and food and wine guide in France. And I think her adventure, you know, as a newcomer, embodies a lot of what's happening right now in the Ventoux, because for instance, when my parents started in the early 90s after my grandparents, there were only like 10 independent wineries in the Ventoux, and now we're 150. And you know, there is this great dynamic inside the AOC with all people coming from all over the world and lots of new talents and all people sharing the same passion of wine, coming to kind of explore the Ventoux terroir. And so again, Patricia is a great example of that with this wine. 16 is a relatively solar vintage, a lot of sun, no doubt, but I think it's also a great example of how you can capture the concentration and the southern character, but keep the balance thanks to the natural acidity we get thanks to our microclimate. So definitely a 16 red Ventoux in every possible way, this wine.
Oh, thanks, Fred. I'm just curious, ageability of these wines. Someone wanted to tuck these away in a cellar. When would you drink them?
It's we're talking about the red, not the rosé, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, for the rosé, for this rosé on a vintage like that, I think you can definitely give it another 10, 15 years. It already has about 5, but usually Grenache works as well, of course, but there's a relatively high percentage of Syrah here that is quite mature Syrah, giving a great backbone. I would definitely keep it for another 15 years without problem.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you know how this particular wine is made, but in your own red wines, are you co-fermenting grapes, or are they fermented separately?
We're trying when we can. It's basically the maturity of the grapes that decide. So when we manage to have both Grenache and Syrah, or even Syrah and Carignan, we kind of never have the chance, but Grenache and Carignan, or Grenache and Cinsault, we'll definitely do it. But usually we have a moment in the beginning where we just do the Syrah because it's the first kind of ripening one, and then we have a long Syrah and Grenache blending moment during the harvest, and then comes the later one, Cinsault, Carignan, and Mourvèdre. So we always try to keep a little bit of Grenache with it, or but yeah, if we could only co-ferment, if the maturities did allow it, that would be our choice.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Michelle, we want to bring you back in because the last wine is yours. So please.
Okay. You want me to present the wine? This is the my own project that I'm doing with my wife. These are we selected vineyards. We acquired vineyards that are overlooking the marshes of Camargue and the Mediterranean. We call it the Camargue balcony. It's a very, very special site where there is actually only a very thin layer of the pebbles from the Rhône because of a fault line that goes from Gigondas to Nîmes. It's called Faille de Nîmes, and where the underground, the terroir from the tertiary, which is layered sand and chalk, are almost to the surface. So the soil is very unusual, very, very high calcium content, and as some of the strongest marine influence. This wine, we called it Nostro País, which means our land. It was really a search for a sense of place, a wine that would have the unique signature of the unique area where it's from. We've experimented a lot. First with the varietals. Our theory is we didn't want it to be about any varietal, so we actually blended all the varietals that we had at our disposal. The second thing is we decided that not using any commercial yeast, but letting the native yeast do the work would reinforce a sense of place. We experimented, and then we realized that if you really want native yeasts to take over, you shouldn't start hitting them with SO2 as it is usually the case. So that's what you'll learn in enological school as what to do when you bring in your grapes. Then also to strengthen the sense of place, we decide to back off oak. But in order to add that extra layer, that complexity that comes from adding something different, we decided to play with whole cluster. Whole cluster, like some of the winemakers doing in Burgundy or in California, is a powerful tool that needs to be used with caution. And through experience, we realized that some vineyards, we could go as high as 60 or 70% whole clusters, while others, 20% would be the max number we should go to. Again, we decided to go very easy with the extractions and do very extensive, I call it infusion, kind of a winemaking technique. And then, little by little, we have a wine when it's really young that might be a little shy, a little inwards. And as the wine age, you get the full complexity of the work and the land. And, to preempt a question, these are bottles of wine that could age for 15, 20 years without a problem. And as the wine age, you realize all the layers that are present or are making this wine. Of course, it's on the tech sheet. We farm organically. We actually NOP certified. We have as little, we use as little product during winemaking as possible. Like I said, we don't use any SO2, just a little bit at bottling. We also are working hard at regenerative farming. We work a lot with cover crops. We are experimenting with what we call sexual confusion to for pest control in order to avoid spraying any kind of chemicals in our vineyards. So this wine is truly a project in motion, and with a lot of experimentation, and it evolves year in, year out.
That's a lot of great information, Michelle. I'm just curious, first of all, how long is, with a native ferment like this, how long does the whole take, from start to finish? How long? Because it would seem to me to be a long, very gradual process.
Actually, fermentation itself lasts maybe 2 to 3 weeks, which is about twice the time it would take if we added commercial yeasts. Infusion time on the skins is way beyond, sometimes even the mallow on the skins, depending, because we don't use any SO2. Frequently, malolactic occurs right after the end of fermentation.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm curious, what's total production on this particular wine?
We do about 3,000 cases.
How long have you made this? For how many years have you been producing this wine?
About 15 years.
It's very pretty indeed, isn't it, Tim? It's on the palate. I seem to be stuck on mouthfeel today, but it's just tender.
It's really deceptive to me. It's very deceptive because the nose is so lifted. And again, I have to point to, density and dry extract. And I would have to say, Michelle, lower yields here because the middle of the wine is so tightly wound. And I think that speaks to the aging potential that you're talking about.
Yeah, and the whole cluster inclusion also helps with that mid palate. It creates wines that are a bit tight when they're young, but this is a 216, so it has had time to relax a little bit. And the whole cluster is starting to show its complexity and what it's adding to the mix. But
it's showing balanced. It's absolutely showing balanced even at this age, but like Tim said, it's just starting to unfurl.
Right.
Yeah. And so is this whole set of winemaking conditions, is it used just for this specific wine or others as well?
I'd say this is where we experimented first, and anything that we actually see work in helping us produce the styles that we like, we expand. So for instance, right now we're just done with the 220 vintage. Fermentation is just done. I do not have a drop of red wine that has actually a drop of wine in this harvest that has seen SO2. And outside of some rosés, I'd say 3/4 of all the wines we produce are using indigenous yeasts.
Are the other, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about stuck fermentations.
When you go to school and you learn winemaking and they stress you out with that, no, I'm serious. I frequently say winemaking school is not, you don't learn to make good wines. Enologues are like doctors. You go see a doctor when you're sick. When you're not sick, you stay home. And I guess winemakers, you're trying to make sure that your vines and your vats stay healthy. It happens. I mean, every year we have a couple vats or barrels that finish their fermentation in the spring when the weather warms up. And you know what? It's happened almost every year. I've never had an issue with it. But you've got to have the nerves not to panic and say, and eventually you're going to lose a barrel or two. But, that comes with the territory.
The question I was going to ask, just to regroup on this, I think Tim was referring to or asking if you were applying this methodology to your other wines, which I understood to be, the combination of whole cluster, whole berry, natural yeast, 30-day plus infusion, and co-fermenting. Is this something that, as evidenced by the quality of this wine, you're integrating into your other wines as well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan in co-ferment. I feel like, I love Grenache. Grenache to me is a very classy, hedonistic varietal, but can be a bit much. I love to co-ferment with Mourvèdre and Carignan because they add acidity, they add a little color, a little backbone to the Grenache. And Syrah, if we want to wait for Grenache to be ripe, to me, Syrah can be, at least where we are, a bit overripe if we wait that long. And instead of providing the lift, it actually makes the co-ferment perhaps a bit heavier.
Huh.
So I like to co-ferment with varietals that ripen after Grenache.
You said you like to co-ferment Mourvèdre and
with Carignan.
And Carignan.
With Grenache with Carignan or Mourvèdre. Yeah.
Well, it certainly is a delicious wine. Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Earlier you were talking about also global warming. We're also experimenting with. We're also. I run the farm with my brother, and we're also fruit producers, and we're experimenting, alternating, fruit trees and vineyards, in order to cast partial shade. We feel like it's an avenue of that is promising in battling global warming. Obviously, we've replanted a lot of the late ripening varietals like Mourvèdre, Carignan, a little bit of Cinsault. As people know, I'm sure, most of them are originally from Spain, even though they found a home in the Rhône Valley. So they come from further south. So we feel like they can still handle a few more degrees and still be in their element. The ripeness level is also an element. There's a lot of avenues that we're exploring in order to keep the balance, the freshness in this changing environment.
Tim, I think
That's
we're going to
great.
go into Q&A.
That's great. Okay. Hi, Evan.
Hey,
I'm going to
Jenny got
ask.
10.
I'm going to ask all of the speakers to come back on video, if you don't mind, so that we can actually pose some Q&A questions to you guys. So thank you, everyone. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So in our last 10 minutes, we have a number of questions. For those of you who've been asking questions on the chat, you can go to the answered section for some of the production numbers. I definitely want to first lob the question about, Frederic, just very quickly, we have the production of your wine, but what is the production of your domain in total?
It's about 40,000 cases.
And the wine is?
And the wine is?
No, the domain of all the wines you produce and versus...
Château Pesquier.
Yes.
It's 40,000 cases is the total production, but maybe there's a question I don't understand. Sorry. The
wine that we tasted today.
Oh, that was okay. No, I thought you had this. For Terroirs Rosé, we did about 4,000 cases, a tenth of that.
Frederic, are your cases, are they 6-bottle cases or 12-bottle cases?
12 packs.
Great.
Excellent. And then I will start with Cyril for this particular question on climate change. Is climate change playing with your harvesting decisions? And in some of the riper, just one second, I'm having to make sure that the spotlight is canceled. Thank you. Is climate change playing a role in your harvesting decisions, and particularly looking at some of the riper vintages in Provence and Rhône sometimes seem to lack acidity and nervosity? And this is a question from Dave M. He's attributing this to the razor's edge of deciding when to harvest, and perhaps winemakers need to adjust to the changing climate. Cyril, we'll start with you, and then Frederic and Michelle, if you guys want to take a stance on that too.
Yeah, for me, it's starting to be actually an issue. because sometimes when you want Grenache really ripe, you have, I think, too much sugar, so alcohol is getting up and up. And I've been working for Brotte since 2003. It was the most, the warmest year of the century, actually, in this time. But we had like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 2003 since this time. So actually, yeah, it's giving some difficulties, some hard time for winemaking. So we adjust our winemaking process. We sometimes harvest earlier, and we use some techniques like I don't know, some yeasts or techniques in winemaking, complex techniques, but to keep freshness and to have less alcohol in our wines. Yes.
Frédéric, do you want to add on to how climate change has affected harvesting for you?
Absolutely. Well, it is a major issue for everyone, and it's to give everyone a sense of what we're talking about. When my father started in the 80s, we would start the harvest between the 20th and the 25th of September. This year, in 2020, we started picking late August. It was our record. It was the first time we were actually picking that early, and so. This is, I'm not saying that as an average, we're picking a month earlier, but definitely between 2 and 3 weeks. If we look at the average of the last 10 years compared to what we used to do in the 70s or in the 80s. So it's massive. It's a massive change. In an odd fashion for the Ventoux, it's kind of been helpful in the sense that because we're the later ripening area, maturity has been a challenge in the 70s and the 80s, and
oh no, I think we have a
freeze.
I think we have a freeze. Frédéric.
okay,
There you are.
Sorry, I don't know what happened, but it used to be a challenge to get to maturity, and now, of course, you know, the real important issue for everyone is to keep balance, is to get natural acidity, and so in the Ventoux, on that extent, we're still on not on the dark side, let's say, but I think there are many ways to turn around that with winemaking techniques and trying to harvest a little bit earlier on, but we're going to have to evolve structurally in many ways. We have the chance to have a very wide number of varieties we can play with. And I think this is going to be very helpful. You know, in our area, Mourvèdre wouldn't ripen in the 80s. It's starting to be a very helpful grape. Cinsault is probably, you know, going to get, it already has its time of glory for rosé, but I think it's going to have a moment of glory for reds in the coming years. Counoise will probably be also, you know, a variety that we're going to see on the mid to long term becoming more and more important. We have many tools to adapt, fortunately, I mean, to a certain point. So, and again, you know, in the Ventoux so far, it's been helping us, but we are definitely feeling the challenge.
Great. Michelle, did you want to jump in with a couple of?
Yeah, I'd say that it's obviously a game changer, not just in terms of temperature, but in terms of rainfall. If we look at what we had in 19, which was a dismal year in terms of rainfall, probably less than half the yearly average of those past 30 years. And then the following year, about 2.5 times that amount of rainfall. I think that all the parameters that we're used to playing with, need to be revisited, from which rootstocks we're using, which varietals are best, the density of plantings, which are the best exposures. You've learned and that, everybody tells you this is a southern exposure, so it's great. Well, right now, northern exposures are way better. Like I said, not trying to find spots that are a little bit of shaded. Obviously early picking is something you can do right away. All those other parameters are something that you set when you plant your vineyard, so you can't, you can't evolve instantly. It is a big concern. And on top of everything, the market, or at least the kind of wines that people want to drink today, go the absolute opposite direction. People want wine with more freshness, perhaps a little less alcohol, and the overall warming tends to give us wine with more alcohol, more power, more richness, and it's finding the right balance between just ripe also and not underripe, because just picking earlier cannot be the answer to global warming. It just can't in and of itself.
Good question. Li Meng, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask people who have other questions, since I know we're coming up to the bewitching hour, to come and join us in the happy half hour afterwards. But Li Meng, if you want to bring us to the last slide so I can just close this up.
I do have one question, Evan, that I think needs to be addressed from a quality standpoint. There's a question here from Gabrielle Stafford that both Tavels actually displayed a bit of a subtle baked or cooked fruit and spice nature that lingers after the fresh fruit waned in the mouth. I just want to address this head on to see if Evan, your glass, Tim, your glass, and Madeline, your glass displayed any of that. I'm wondering if it's an anomaly where the delivery of this product got hot on a truck, or and very fairly, Gabriel, thank you for this question, did ask, with no oak treatment, are baked fruit flavors expected?
My wines are showing great. Both the Tavels, if you were talking to those, are, they're warming up in a positive way. It's not bothering them. The Brotte Tavel is showing rustic in the best possible way. It's got some muscle, it's got some shoulders. If anything, the Acaria has tightened up a little and the salinity shows a little more. Tim?
Yeah, both wines to me are very fresh.
What they said, I would add what they said. So Li Meng, do you mind going back to the last couple of slides? And I'll save my thank yous to everybody in said slides. But as I kicked off at the very beginning, I can tell you how much I was looking forward to this particular presentation. I hope that what was considered off-roads are now considered on-roads for everybody, and getting back off the beaten track is something we all do. Just want a quick reminder that next week we have our final two sessions for this year's 2020 Full Circle BevCon Live at Home. The first one on Tuesday will be Andean Adventures, where we have a UFC power match between Chile and Argentina, looking at two micro focuses in those two countries. And then for those of you who miss Europe still, A is for Alentejo will take us into that beloved part of Iberia, where Laura will join us through. A lot of goodies there to reminders to join in and participate in the winning aspect of it. And just finally, before you join us for a happy half hour or leave on your own, the last slide is I always finish off in saying, Li Meng, I don't think I have control here, so just move me to the last slide. Yeah, just
the chat at the same time was a little difficult.
No worries, no worries. But as they would say in France, merci bien to nos speakers, to our panelists, to our sponsors. I want to thank Tim and Madeline for an incredible moderation and orchestration of this. Our speakers couldn't have been any better, thanks to the generosity of the individual Appellation and to Sabine for her oversight of all of this. And we can continue now into our happy half hour. Once again, if you're going to join us, you click off this and reconnect. Andrea has posted the link directly in the chat, but you can get to it through your other, Thinkific log on, your Facebook log on, and continue to enjoy your wines. They were diverse, they were wonderful, and they're still delicious. Thank you again. Look forward to seeing hopefully all of you next week for our final two sessions, and we'll join again. Again, merci bien à tous.